So, okay, awesome. Well, so whenever you're ready to start, I'm going to be folding laundry while we do this because I didn't have any clean clothes for work.
Ah, it's what it is. Let me read this intro.
Do the thing. Yep.
Success has a funny way of showing up where you least expect it. Just ask Dan Duvall. What started as a whim to join Twitter turned into a thriving comedy writing career, built 140 characters at a time. But can tweeting really open a door to a career in writing? And what happens when being funny online becomes more than just a hobby? You're listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachel and Roxanne.
Hi, Rachel. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Roxanne. How are you?
I'm doing well. I laughed through this whole documentary, and it's one of the shorter ones we've watched. And I actually wished it was longer because I just kept cracking up through the whole thing. Whenever they would read one of the funny tweets, like I would pause the video and text to some of my friends. It was great. So I'm glad you picked this one for this week.
Yeah, I thought this was super funny, and I kind of have a little bit of knowledge about this concept and these people through Twitter use over the last, several years. And like a lot of people, when Elon bought Twitter, I shut it down. Uh,
I did too.
I
Mhm.
canceled my account because I did not want any amount of anything I was doing to support that man.
Me
Um,
too.
and so when we got around to this documentary, which is entitled "Funny Tweets," um, when I jumped into it, I was like, "Oh, Elijah Daniels, I know him," and "Oh, Dan Duvall, that name sounds familiar." And so I was like pulling from these things where I was vaguely peripherally aware of their whole situation.
Mhm.
But then I went and did some research after watching the documentary, and girl, I have things to tell you about these people.
I want to know because the only person I recognized was Andy Richter because he's been around forever. And, with my homelessness situation, Twitter was not at the top of my interest. And like you said, when Elon Musk took over and fired 40% of the workforce at Christmas, I was like, I'm done. Shut down my account, never sent another tweet. And I was a purely Facebook and Instagram girl from then on. So I want to hear everything you found out. So
Okay,
yeah. Well, what was going on in 2018?
so in 2018, the Winter Olympics were held in South Korea. 2018 was the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, which was one of the deadliest school massacres at the time, with 17 fatalities and 17 injuries. No longer tops that list. There's been worse since then.
Yep.
And the world's last male northern white rhinoceros died in Kenya, making the subspecies functionally extinct.
Oh,
But on a positive note, in 2018, Saudi Arabia changed the laws that allowed women to start driving.
one thing at a time, one step at a time.
Yep.
That's sad about the white rhino, though. That really is.
Yeah, this is one of those places where I'm hopeful that stem cell research and all the things we're doing, and maybe they can be brought back, or something.
Sure.
Who knows. But it's actually, so this documentary, which was filmed in 2018, it's about a guy named Dan Duvall who built a career in comedy in a very non-traditional manner. He was a pharmacy assistant in bumfuck Canada, like some tiny town that they never even told us the name of.
Some island in Canada. Mhm.
Yeah. So tiny, tiny town. He had nothing to do. He woke up hungover one morning and did not want to get off the couch. And he's like, all right, well, I guess I'll join Twitter so I don't have to stand up. And he parlayed that into a career. And in the very first beginning of the documentary, it opens with writing is just the first half to say something. The second half is that it needs to be heard, which I think is a beautiful quote in and of itself. But in the concept of social media, I think it's just amazing that you have something to say and you're putting it out into the world, and anybody who sees it can respond back to you. It feels very very apropos of, Threads and Twitter and all of the social media sites.
Right. Absolutely. And unfortunately, you don't get that immediate gratification. Like if you're doing stand up or if you're talking to somebody and you say something funny and you make the person next to you laugh, you get that adrenaline rush right away. But I can only imagine what it's like having thousands and then 10,000s of people repeating, retweeting what it is that you said. I mean, the best compliment that I ever had on Facebook was I wrote something funny and a girl I went to high school with, Sue, she comments on it and she goes, "Oh my God, you have to quit your job and just stay home and post on Facebook all day." It's like,
I've had some one-liners that have been very successful on Twitter and Facebook and some various things. Like I think at one point I tweeted something like, "Today when my husband was dropping me off, he wished me luck at work." And I don't need luck. Maybe wish me perkier boobs. And that was that one kind of took off. And I had one where I was watching.
it's like, I'm good at my job, but I have no control over my boobs.
Yeah, and then I had one where I was like, hashtag Jurassic Park 3. These idiots hired Mr. Noodle's brother, Mr. Noodle, to protect them from dinosaurs. They're all gonna die. Because like,
That's right.
so yeah, so I've had some little one-offs that have been very funny, but I don't put any real time or effort into it to really
Right.
create this, space where I am showing the world how funny I can be on a regular basis. That's just not a thing that I'm doing. That's not what I use it for. But apparently, Twitter is like perfect for one-liners. And if you wanted to build a comedy career, as they address here in this documentary, if you treat it like a job and you sit down and you work out funny tweets on paper and you really like shop them and rework them until they're as funny as they can be, and you post 3 or 4 or 5 times a day and you build up an audience and get yourself seen, that can potentially get you in front of people who may want to hire you as a comedy writer. Dan
Right.
Duvall got himself in front of Andy Richter and a couple of other people, and to the point to where they called him or reached out to him and said, "Hey, I have this gig that I think you would be good for. Will you come out for it?" And he said, "Yeah, but I don't have any money or anybody to stay with in California. Can I stay with you?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure." So he went and stayed on, I think it was Andy Richter's couch.
And yeah, I stayed on Andy Richter's couch, and it's like this doesn't happen to me. Famous people don't invite me out to stay on their couch because I was funny on Facebook.
Yeah, and then he's talking to all of these people who the what he is trying to present, and the feeling that you get from the documentary is that he's talking to people who also got their start pretty much on Twitter. Um, and he's got one person who is a writer on The Simpsons, and he says, a lot of Homer's funniest one-liners could have begun as tweets, and talking about the one-offs of the Homer Simpson and kind of how he got this job, and so there was a lot of that sort of thing where you would get to talk to somebody about their use of social media and Twitter as a vehicle for humor and how that parlayed into their career or what that did for them at another point. And that was really interesting to get to see, what was it, 8, 10, 12 people and hear their
Yeah.
things.
The only thing that alarmed me, was it the Canada guy that was the pharmacist?
Yeah.
Was that him? When the narrator said, "So in between, or maybe during, filling people's Demerol prescriptions, he's tweeting." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. I don't want my pharmacy tech to be distracted while filling my freaking Demerol."
Yeah.
Demerol is good shit, and I really yeah, so
But
I
yeah,
giggled at that.
he got into it and he was in it up to his elbows almost immediately. He was treating it like a job. And they even mentioned a statistic as of 2018 that there were 5,000 tweets made every second.
No, that surprised me too.
Yeah, there is.
Now, I wonder though if that statistic is still valid considering what's going on, or with Musk and Doge and Trump and all of that. That would be interesting.
That
While you're talking, I'm gonna look it up on my phone to
sure.
see if I can find something.
Um, and they talked about how written jokes don't always translate to spoken jokes. And so they were talking to some of the TV writers and about, when you write jokes, you write a lot. You write a huge number of jokes, and then everybody in the writers' room pulls it all together and they go through and they read them out loud. And you can hear when something is better on paper than it is out loud, and that one gets scrapped because it's not going to make the opening for Seth Meyers or whatever. Hmm?
Sorry, according to this, and this is from the Bureau of Statistics. It's not the Twitter or X website. In 2025, so far, they're getting 6,000 per second. Half a billion. No, I'm sorry, I'm lying. 200 million per day to 300 million per day. Damn.
Yeah, but I also wonder how much of that is bots and how much of
Oh,
that.
that's a good point too. They might not be, and they may be counting retweets as well, as opposed to original tweets. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we'll have like that particular statistic with any kind of accuracy, unfortunately. But that's a good, general idea of, even though the whole everything in the Twitter fiasco has kind of chased away a bunch of the audience, they're still seeing a bunch of tweets. And then they brought up a term that I wanted to ask you about because I have never heard this before. Paraprosdokian?
I had not heard that either, but I immediately wrote it down, and I can't believe I've never heard of that. It's such a cool linguistics term.
Yeah, they said that a paraprosdokian is a figure of speech in which the latter part of a sentence, phrase, or larger discourse is surprising or unexpected in a way that makes you like reframe or reinterpret the first part and you get a laugh. Is very popular with like Winston Churchill and Dorothy Parker and Mitch Hedberg and Groucho Marx and like people who were big on the one-liner.
Right.
So that's who they were referencing there. And they shared some of the famous one-liners that these people were famous for. So Winston Churchill famously said, "Men occasionally stumble over the truth, but most of them pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing had happened."
Right.
And Dorothy Parker had, "If you want to know what God thinks of money, just look at the people he gave it to." And she
I
also
like
said,
the other Dorothy Parker one that you put in our notes.
yeah, she also said, "Don't look at me in that tone of voice."
I love that. I absolutely love that, because that's the way my mother used to be like, "Don't you roll your eyes at me, ugly." Because when my mom would say something that I considered stupid, my eyes went back so far, I almost saw 1975. But the one that in the documentary that I thought was the funniest, because I'm macabre, was the one by Emo Phillips, who was at the award ceremony and said, "I'm so excited to be here. I didn't know what to wear, so my mother said, 'Why don't you wear your grandfather's good tuxedo?' So I got a shovel." And that was perfect. That I was like, that's awesome. That was one I texted to a friend.
Yeah, and they were kind of showing these little video clips and quotes, and then they would pop tweets up on the screen. Throughout the whole documentary, they would intersect videos and conversations with tweets. And so they had the first one that popped up was, "I think I'll save these painkillers for when I'm feeling better." And and
The
then
Adderall, see, it comes full circle.
and then like, "My personal style is best described as, I didn't expect to get out of the car," which
Yeah,
same, that's me. Uh,
I can relate. Oh yeah.
and like, "I just saw my parents having sex. That's the last time I go onto that website." And,
Oh yeah.
and then the other one that I wrote down was, "Wow, my Netflix won't work due to a payment error. Geez, mom, get your shit together." So yeah,
Oh yeah, I giggled through the whole thing.
so I loved being able to intersect the conversation with the little bits from Twitter that were getting so much attention and making people so famous. And they talked about how Jack Handy from Saturday Night Live was sort of the
Oh yeah.
precursor to Twitter. And I don't know, we
Uh,
probably have listeners who have never even heard of Jack Handy, but back in the 80s and the 90s, when Saturday Night Live was going on, they had a thing with a character called Jack Handy, who I was it Phil Hartman who did Jack Handy or
yes. Yeah. It in this very soothing voice. I loved Deep Thoughts. Oh,
and he would just say the most ridiculous things, but it felt very much like if you posted these things on Twitter, they would fit right in. But it was done with music and over pictures of flowers, and like it was the original meme.
and the one that I love, this is my favorite one. He goes, "When I die, I want to go peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather, not screaming in terror like his passengers." I just it was one of the word that you said. It was one of those, it's like, "Oh, dying in your sleep like an old man." That wait, what? I love them. I love them. My ex-brother-in-law was so fascinated with it. My ex-husband and I got him a whole book of them, of deep thoughts. And you can look it on the internet. Listeners, seriously, take a few moments, type in Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy, and you can read all of them. They're great.
Yes. And one of the things that they pointed out that I absolutely loved about Twitter, and I never pieced it together until they mentioned it in the documentary, was that Scottish Twitter, they write with the Scottish spoken accent. And I knew
I
they
didn't
did
even
that.
know that was a thing. I didn't know Scottish Twitter was a thing.
Like I knew that Scottish Twitter wrote their accent into their tweets because I loved reading Scottish Twitter and I always thought it was so funny. And it never occurred to me that, oh, they are leaning into their accent for laughs, not
Uh-huh.
writing just how they would write in Scotland. And they write proper English. They just sound Scottish.
Right.
And so this is a purposeful choice. So even like entire communities on Twitter find ways to lean into the humor together in this way. Um, and Twitter, like even I was big on science Twitter and like medical Twitter. I loved following doctors and researchers and scientists and hearing what they had to say. And even they tried to make their tweets funny to get attention, even though what they were sharing was, here's the research that I've been doing for the last 7 months. It was published in this journal. And they love to throw a little joke at the end of it so that you enjoy reading it and you want to click their link.
Because nobody wants to read well, except people like you and I with medical conditions. Don't want to read boring medical tweets. Um, so yeah, you've got to parse it with humor.
Yeah, and Twitter really it changed the world for writers. Was the what the documentary said. Dan Duvall's approach was that Twitter changed the world for writers because you could land a writing job from the middle of nowhere, and that Twitter is truly a meritocracy for writers because talent trumps everything always. It doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter how abrasive you are to deal with in person. None of that shines through. It's only the quality of what you are putting out there that you're being judged on.
Which is what writing should be. It should have nothing to do if you're, like you said, a member of a protected class or, how physically attractive you are. If you're brilliant and you're funny, that'll do it every time.
Yeah.
And originally Twitter was, 125 characters. So you had to be succinct. You had to be sharp. You couldn't ramble like somebody I know in Washington that rambles, you know.
Well, and then at this point is when they got into Trump and his Twitter presence. And this was early on in his first presidential term. So this was way before everything we've been dealing with now. This was the Covfefe days of
Right.
Trump's Twitter presence. And it was so almost almost a gut punch to watch like Elijah Daniels, who is a guy who is professionally an asshole online and gets paid for it. He tweeted funny things. He was on Vine. He did the things, and he tweeted at Donald Trump hey, will you buy me a BMW if I have sex with you or whatever? And then like a month later, he bought himself a BMW and posted pictures of himself with his car and was like, thanks, Donald. And was getting messages from like reporters being like, did Trump really buy you a car for having sex with him? And he was like, yeah, he did. And he ended up getting cease and desist.
And then Trump blocked him.
Got blocked.
Oh no.
And then he wrote a like 20-page book, for lack of a better term, that was like a story of his sexual escapades with Trump. And
I don't know if I could
published
get
it.
through that. I really don't. I think my imagination is too good and I'd be envisioning it. And
And then, like, apparently, I don't know if it was Pornhub or like whatever it was, but somebody
Pornhub. It was
created
Pornhub.
a porn parody of Donald Trump that would seem to be like based around this book that he had written, or at least included several of the bits from the book. And I cannot imagine today if somebody went on Twitter or Instagram or Threads and said, yeah, Donald Trump bought me a car for having sex with him, they would be unalived. They would be taken away by secret police. But yeah, so I cannot imagine that whole situation happening today the way it happened in 2016, 2017.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Cops would show up on his door and he'd disappear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
And the tattoo. He got a tattoo. How shall I put this? Of, well, Trump's. But and it was really funny because it was actually like pretty accurate looking. And then he said a lesbian actually did it who'd never even seen a
that's
penis.
um
And I was like, I don't know if I'd want that on my body forever. I mean, way to take one for the team, Elijah, but damn.
well, and then they mentioned Elijah Daniels bought himself the town of Hell, Michigan allows you to buy yourself the ability to be mayor for a day. And you get to go and make grand decrees and say you're mayor of hell. And then the next day, that's fine. You got to get out. They're not implementing any of these changes that you're making. It's just for the clout of being able to say you're the mayor of hell. And when they said that, I almost got punched in the face by like the world. And I was like, oh my God, I know who this guy is. Because I followed his comedy partner, Christine Sidelko, religiously in 2017, 2018. She was so funny. And I always thought he was kind of the asshole that she had to put up with to be able to be a little bit funny. And so far, this documentary kind of proved me right. Like, he
He did sort of give that vibe, and I'd never heard of him before. And when you sent me the notes, I had never heard of Christine either.
she is very funny. You may, if you have, time later and you're bored or whatever, if you want to look her up on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, she's got a bunch of comedy stuff. But she was so famous and so Twitter famous and funny that she was actually tagged and put in a Katy Perry music video.
I didn't know that.
Along
Certainly.
with like Doug the Pug and a bunch of other internet celebrities. So I thought that was super funny that he was in this documentary and I'm watching him talk and I'm watching him talk and I'm like, why? Vaguely familiar. And I was like, oh, he's that guy who made Christine's life hard. Okay, now I know who this is.
Is she the lesbian that drew the dick?
No, I don't know anything about her sexual preferences. From what I picked up, she declared herself asexual. She really wasn't interested. But it's been years and years, and she in 2019 chose to walk away from internet fame because she just, even the positive parts of it, she just didn't want that attention. She liked being funny, but she didn't need everybody to be paying attention to her all the time. So she walked away from it, which
It must be exhausting on some level. I mean, performers obviously do love attention, but I've noticed a lot of them like it only on their terms when they go on stage or they're in a film or in a play. But when you're doing Twitter, you're always on stage because of time zones. It's 24/7, and you can just send the wrong thing or word it wrong. Somebody's going to take offense. And I forget which one it was, but he was saying that his Twitter fame was starting to affect his social life because he found himself going out for content. That was why he'd go out with his friends and not even pay attention to the fun he was having with his friends because he's constantly searching for what's going to be a funny tweet. What can I tweet about this? That's exhausting. You know, when I hang out with you and your family on a social level, when we're not doing the podcast, I don't want to have to sit there and go, what can I say funny about Rachel and her family later today? I mean, no.
Yeah, I imagine that being committed to this the way that these people were, it just has to take over your whole life. Every thought, because you can't just walk away from it. You're not on Twitter from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You're on it all day, every time you have a moment to pull out your phone. And you're constantly needing to put out new content. It's not like a weekly show that gets released. You're constantly all day, every day. If you're not putting out something funny, people are going to move on to the next funny person.
Sure.
So it had to be overwhelming for them. But they did talk about how, Twitter is a safe way to engage with the community, but that the downside is that it is compulsive engagement with a stupid blinking machine, was their words.
Right.
And I think that's more true than they are even aware of, that it is an addiction in a very real form. And the constant validation seeking that you're doing, putting things out into the universe in that way, that's not good for your soul or your mental health.
Oh, and your mental health. Absolutely. Especially if you're like me and you have a really thin skin. I mean, I'd be that person who 10,000 people could like my tweet or retweet it, but that one guy in Billings, Montana that took offense, that's what I'd obsess about for days. That's why I'm not famous.
Yeah. And they even addressed how men are treated so much better on Twitter than women are, even in their worst moments. When men are being canceled for saying stupid things on Twitter, their families are not being threatened. They're not being threatened with sexual assault. They're not being, treated the way that women are treated online. And they're given more credit from the beginning for being funny and smart and talented than women are, even though a lot of these people were not funnier than most of the internet women that I have followed. And especially, there's a woman who, I'll get into the details of her story a little bit towards the end of this. Her name is Megan Amram. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. I'm sorry, Megan.
You are, because I know her father.
Uh,
Yes.
But
Her father is David Amram, who's a famous musician. Yeah.
But she was a writer, and then she got on Twitter and she built up this huge audience. And from her Twitter audience, rolled herself into a job writing for The Good Place and then The Simpsons. And then she hosted or wrote for the Oscars at one point. Like, she got big writing jobs that were a springboard from Twitter into this work. She was one of the funniest people on Twitter, and not once did they mention her. She was one of the Twitter funny royalty, and they didn't even bring up her name.
Well, women in comedy are definitely discriminated against. I mean, before Lucille Ball, we basically had nobody. The comedians that performed in the Catskills at the Jewish resorts, they were also largely Jewish men. They were all men. You had those, those guys. And even Jerry frickin' Lewis, who I hated with the fire of 1,000 suns, he went, women were not made to be comedians. They were made to stay home and have babies. Oh, fuck you, Jerry Lewis. So yeah, we are heavily misrepresented. I mean, today, we only have Margaret Cho, obviously, and I can't, who else? I can't, even really, really think. Wanda Sykes, who we mentioned.
Yeah,
but
Taylor
there's still definitely
is a huge female comedian that's today.
Yep.
Kathleen Madigan, who I love. Amy Schumer, who I don't love, but she's a big name in the industry. Like
Sarah Silverstein. Yeah.
yeah. So there is there is a strong female presence in the industry today that really wasn't possible in the 50s, 60s. Like, there was Phyllis Diller, there was Joan Rivers. Prior to that, it was Nichols and May and Gracie Allen with George Burns and like
Yeah, I forgot about Gracie Allen. How could I forget about Gracie Allen? You
so.
know?
But
Yeah.
they were few and far between at that point.
Mhm.
And even when they were in the industry, it was, oh, I'm such a silly housewife kind of humor. It
Right.
other topics. So there's been huge forward movement with like Eliza Schlesinger and other women who are big in the industry today. Love all of them. Love getting to see their content. But yeah, they definitely are on the receiving end of some shit that men do not get.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think anybody ever sexually harassed Jerry Stiller. I mean, it's and of course the assumption, like always, is they had sex with somebody to get to where they are.
Yeah. So it was nice to see them address the gender differential, the way that people are treated based on their gender on Twitter and in the workplace and like all of that. So even though this was a documentary that was mostly men, they had one woman who was a professional writer who had got a book deal from posting on Twitter. And I thought she was great. But other than that, it was just a bunch of guys talking to each other about being on Twitter.
Right.
And then they talked about how the transparency of Twitter um kind of holds people accountable for things in a way that they weren't before. So if you tweeted a horrible thing and nobody saw it, and then later you got famous, people were going to go back through your history of things you posted,
Oh yes.
and
Oh
you were
yes.
going to be canceled for it. And then they talked about Gilbert Gottfried losing that Affleck money because he was making fun of the Japanese tsunami too soon.
Oh my god. I watched that and I'm like, "Oh, really, Gilbert? Really? That's just wrong." Yeah.
Well, I mean, Gilbert Gottfried has never built a career on being appropriate and pleasant. It that no nobody's ever like, I like that Gilbert Gottfried. He's so calming. Like that's not a thing.
Exactly. Yeah, his approach and Stephen Wright's approach, so we say, is entirely different. Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine he was going to say horrible things about a lot of stuff, but that one particular issue really caught the public eye, and he lost his Aflac duck money. He was the voice of
Mhm.
the duck that said Aflac
Oh yeah.
years and years. They talked a lot about, transparency and people being held accountable and all of the, you're going to be canceled if you tweet inappropriate things. And then they got into a Twitter presence from somebody who called himself the Fat Jew. The person that they are referring to in this documentary as the Fat Jew is stealing people's content and monetizing it in other places. Like, he's essentially putting together books and websites and other things where he's earning thousands of dollars, taking other people's tweets and using them without attribution. And
Right.
then he got his comeuppance when he wrote a book and somebody copied it and put the whole thing online for free under their own name.
It's like, wow, they plagiarized the plagiarizer. It's awesome.
But yeah, apparently, like, Twitter not only made it easier for people to connect with one another and to, be able to be funny and find jobs and stuff, but it also, like, it made it easier to lose your job and end up socially canceled and have other negative repercussions. There's a lot of, like, Twitter heckling that happens where people, like, will just harass the crap out of you for no reason on Twitter or for, dubious reasons.
Well, these are keyboard warriors. They're mighty brave in cyberspace. It's like when somebody attacks you on Facebook. It's like, and that's when I go, oh hell no. you, yeah, it's easy to attack somebody in cyberspace. It's something else to say to your face. So I think that's got a lot to do with that antagonism on Twitter as well.
Yeah. Um, and I mean, like we talked about earlier, Christine Sidelko left the internet completely because she was like, I am done with the hecklers and the negative people and I don't want the attention anymore. I'm sure we've lost a bunch of people who were very funny for that same reason.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
I mean, with public adulation always comes public condemnation, unfortunately. And you found out, from the notes I read, that not all of these people really started their careers on Twitter.
well, what I found out was that none of these people started their careers on Twitter, and for Dan Duvall. So like Matt Selman has been working on The Simpsons since 1998, which long before Twitter was a thing. Andy Richter has been famous since the late 80s, early 90s. Alex Sulkin was writing for Family Guy in 2005. And Amber Tozer, the woman who got the book deal from Twitter, had been writing professionally since 2005. And so, like, these were people whose careers definitely got a boost from Twitter. And like Alex Sulkin was, I believe he was the one who had said he was funny on Twitter. And so Sarah Silverman reached out and was like, hey, you're funny. And they ended up dating for 2 years. So
Yeah.
he definitely saw benefits from being on Twitter. But the only one of these people, as best as I can tell, who can claim that they went from nothing in a nowhere town, middle of nowhere, to being a professional writer because of Twitter was Dan Duvall.
Mhm.
And then I went and looked up Dan Duvall to see what's going on now because, like, this was 2018 and it's now 2025. There's been some time. Guess who is not a professional writer?
Oh, really? Is he back at the pharmacy or?
No, he had in 2011, he wrote a show called Nick Twits, emphasis on the twit part for Twitter, where each
Got it.
episode talked to different people who had been funny on Twitter and like he created a TV show out of it. That's it. That's it.
Wow.
But
Huh.
he has no other credits to his name. And I'm sure he has other stuff. It's very common in Hollywood that you will get paid for a project and put it all together and then it goes nowhere and it gets shelved or canned. So I would bet money that he was involved in a couple of projects that just didn't get off the ground and they couldn't be included on his IMDb. But at this point, he is trying to build a stand-up career in Canada. And I don't know that he's doing tons of great because my family and I are really into stand-up comedy. We love stand-up comedians. We pursue it as like 4 or 5 times a year we will go see a live stand-up comedian that we know and like
Yeah.
and like we go to, comedy nights with comedians that you'll never hear of again. I know the names of comedians who nobody else knows because I've seen them online. Never heard of this dude before this documentary. So
Right, right. Is it possible that he ditched Twitter because of Musk, like so many other people?
it's possible, or it's also possible that he may have, in the wake of COVID, he was just building this career and then COVID shut everything down and then like ended up having to walk away. He might still be on Twitter. I don't know. But whatever career he was building from this did not pan out the way he had hoped it would.
Right, right.
Which is not to say anything negative about him. He's a very funny guy, like as we saw in this documentary, and as you can see when going through his tweets, he's a funny dude. He's,
Yeah.
you know, I have no problem saying that he is humorous. I enjoy listening to him talk and seeing what he has to say. But this documentary is built on the concept that you can build a career out of this, and not one of these people did.
Yeah, yeah.
And even like the people that I had thought about, like Megan Amram and some of the other people that I was like, well, they built a career off Twitter. No, they were professional writers and professional comedians whose career got a boost from Twitter. They did not start from nothing. Which makes me sad because the whole time I was watching this, I was like, I bet you I could carve out 45 minutes a day to be funny on Twitter.
Well, I thought of you immediately. I was like, Rachel's hilarious, but I just can't with the muskness of it all. I mean, so I'll be funny on Threads.
Yeah, like Threads or Blue Sky or one of the other options. Like I can see being like, I will take the time to build up an audience and be funny here if that potentially will open doors for me. But it doesn't look like it will.
Yeah.
So
But it is encouraging. I mean, like you said, you can be in like bumfuck nowhere. And, you don't have to be in New York. You don't have to be in California. You don't have to be at the Comedy Store or, the comedy shop or anything. You can be in your bedroom at 2 o'clock in the morning on your phone. Because I guarantee, I mean, there's 320 million people in America. Some of them have got to be funny. And I'm sure a lot of them are funnier than Gilbert Gottfried. And there's this untapped, sense of that a lot of people that might be hilarious and we just don't know about them, and they're struggling in little pissant comedy clubs that and they don't need to, so I think for regular people it's absolutely, absolutely great. And the thrill of somebody famous following you, I mean, if Hugh Jackman followed me on Twitter, I'd lose my freaking mind.
yeah, it's fun to have those moments of, oh my God, this person that I look up to is following me. They want to hear what I have to say.
I
They,
know.
that definitely has some value to it. And there are some people who are internet famous in a way that, like, I don't know that it would translate elsewhere, but they are just so funny. Like, are you familiar with Drill, DRIL?
No, I don't
Or
know what that is.
you may know him as Wint, WINT.
Don't
So
know him either.
he's a guy who is very, very funny online. And that's what he does. Just constant tweets. He is one of the most notable accounts on Weird Twitter, which is like kind of a surreal, ironic corner of Twitter where people are just funny in odd ways. I'm gonna see if I can pull up some of his tweets because they are very, very funny. Okay, yes. So here he is. He's got everyone less mentally ill than me is privileged, and everyone more mentally ill than me is toxic, and everyone equally mentally ill to me is cool.
Seek out the same level of the Delulu. Yeah.
Yeah, or he's like, if your grave doesn't say rest in peace on it, you are automatically drafted into the skeleton war. Like, it's just very,
And
very
surreal.
silly, like, just surreal and silly, and just his deal is that he's funny on Twitter.
Mm.
And I'm sure he's got a book deal out of it or something. But when I think of people who are like professionally funny on Twitter, he's who I think of. It's just very, very funny. But I've never seen his stuff anywhere else. I've never seen him pop up on TV or anything. Um, the guy Justin Halpern who tweeted about the things his dad said, and then they turned it into a book and then a TV show called Shit My Dad Says.
Right.
He had some success built around being funny on Twitter.
Right. And I believe that's when they talked about also the things that are funny when you read them and not funny when you hear them aloud, because the TV show didn't go over as well as the book, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know if that maybe is because they cast William Shatner to be his dad.
That could be.
And I mean, William Shatner is a talented actor. I'm not gonna, flag him for that. But he's just very specific. And when you think of him, you think of William Shatner and his particular delivery and his particular. So you weren't getting into this character of the dad from Shit My Dad Says. It was,
Mm-hmm.
William Shatner. And I don't know if that maybe made it difficult for people to separate. Um, Clearly there is something here. It gives you the ability to connect with people, and that may be the thing that allows you to springboard into success is you build friends from being funny on Twitter, and those friends build a career, and then they kind of reach out and bring you with them. But outside of that, I don't see how anybody is really successfully turning this into a career.
Yeah. So there goes another career opportunity for me. I'll just keep being funny on Facebook.
Yeah.
Entertaining my little circle of nonsense. I put yesterday on Facebook. I mean, at my store we sell these Halloween candle holders that are full sized glow in the dark hands, And I was doing closing shift last night and I got a little silly and I had one of the girls take a picture of me putting the hands on my boobs, over my shirt. And, I put the picture on Facebook and I wrote, I got some action at the store. And one of my friends wrote, you are just so wonderfully weird. It was enough for me, I was like, yeah, that's great.
Well, and the funniest part of that is that somewhere there are gonna be at least one, maybe 2 people who have candle holders that grabbed your boobs, and they won't
Oh,
ever be there.
definitely. Oh, yes, because we sold some of them. It was funny because the people who liked it, 2 of them were my bosses, so they know I was doing this.
That's too funny. But yeah, so this was a fun documentary to watch.
It was.
I
It was.
enjoyed it. It was very funny. I liked getting to learn a little bit more about people that I was kind of peripherally aware of. And I feel like this watching Elijah Daniels slowly slide into hell, like, because from what I knew of him before, and then seeing him in this documentary that he tried to go from internet asshole to rapper, and then like, so I tried to look him up after everything, and the only thing I could find was that his mother died of COVID, and that because of that, he and Christine Sidelko are briefly on like speaking terms again. But like, I wasn't able to find anything about current career or
Right, right.
so I don't know what's going on with him. Or Dan Duvall. I saw that he has right now on YouTube, he has a new stand-up comedy special, but
Okay.
it on YouTube, filmed in whatever bar in Canada that he was doing his
Oh, okay.
at.
Okay.
So it's not like a Netflix special kind of thing.
Sure, sure, sure.
So yeah, it was interesting. And then I thought it was unique in one of the ways that one of the people who was in the documentary talked about he was a writer for Modern Family,
Mhm.
and he said that but he would do this thing where he was in the writer's room and he'd be on Twitter and he'd tweet something and he'd show it to another writer and be like, look, I got 50,000 likes on this post, and she was like, yeah, but you're gonna have 10 million people laughing at this joke you wrote.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I remember that. I don't remember who it was either. Yeah.
Um, yeah, the guy in the blue shirt with the glasses, like, but
Right.
he he's a writer on Modern Family, and the thing that like was giving him that boost was having people react to him on Twitter, not the Hollywood paid writing gig that he had
Right.
on one of the most successful shows that has been in recent history. I am so glad for some of these people that they were able to use Twitter to shore up and maybe redirect or expand upon careers that they were already building. I'm so glad Dan Duvall had the opportunity to maybe get out of the pharmacy for a little while and try to build something new, even if it didn't pan out for him. Like,
Right.
but yeah, this was a little bit sad when you got to the end of it and realized that no, you really can't build a career on Twitter.
The dream is there, I guess, but at least like you said, you can get your stuff out there, you can entertain people, and quite frankly, with everything going on today, I need as many cute witty one-liners as I can get.
But thanks for listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachel and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into building a career and the documentary Funny Tweets. Join us again next week for a glimpse into another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.
Bye for now.